The metal clipboard launched 2 inches off the counter when General Richard Hale's fist came down on it, and the crack of impact echoed through every corner of the armory like a starter pistol. The fluorescent lights above buzzed indifferently. Somewhere down the corridor, a door swung shut. Everything else went still. "Who cleared you to touch that weapon?" General Hale's complexion had gone the deep, mottled red of a man whose blood pressure regularly threatened structural integrity. 2 thick veins pressed visibly against the skin of his temples, pulsing in rhythm with a rage he wasn't bothering to suppress. His right index finger extended across the armory counter like a spear shaft, aimed directly at the young woman standing behind it. She hadn't moved. She hadn't reacted. She stood with her hands loosely at her sides, feet shoulder-width apart, watching him with the flat, unhurried patience of someone waiting for a traffic light to change. "Do you have any concept of what that rifle is worth?" he continued. "What it can do, what it represents? You're an armory technician, a supply specialist. You count boxes and sign forms. You do not disassemble a Barrett M82. Staff Sergeant Mara Knox said nothing. Her dark brown eyes held his without wavering, without apology, and without the faintest trace of the anxiety that Hale had come to expect from junior enlisted soldiers in his presence. That expectation was not arrogance. It was simply the result of 32 years of experience. Generals occupied a specific gravitational field. People bent toward them. They lowered their chins, shifted their weight, dropped their gaze. It was human nature, military culture, and the physics of institutional hierarchy all operating simultaneously. Mara Knox was not bending. "I asked you a direct question, Staff Sergeant." "I heard you, sir." The words were delivered at a comfortable conversational volume. No tremor, no rush to fill the silence that followed them. Captain Morris, who had been standing near the armory entrance with the posture of a man who deeply regretted walking through that door, made a sound in his throat that might have been the beginning of an intervention. He thought better of it. Hale leaned forward over the counter, closing the distance between his face and hers, using every inch of his 6'3" frame as a psychological instrument. He had used this particular technique on colonels. He had watched decorated combat veterans take a half-step backward under this approach. Knox didn't move a millimeter. "Before I tell you that I was conducting routine maintenance," she said, her tone unchanged, "let me be very clear, General. I signed the weapon out through proper channels at 0600. Everything is documented and logged. The Barrett is due back before 1800. I still have 11 hours. Routine maintenance." The words came out of Hale's mouth like something he'd tasted and found offensive. "That weapon was clean yesterday. I reviewed this armory's logs this morning. No maintenance was scheduled." "Conditions change, sir. Conditions change." He repeated it the way a judge repeats testimony before sentencing. "Staff Sergeant in 32 years of service, I have never walked into a military armory and found a logistics clerk disassembling a 50 caliber anti-material rifle. So let's try this again from the beginning. Who authorized you to handle that weapon?" "That information is classified, sir." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. Captain Morris actually stopped breathing for a moment. He had served under General Hale for 3 years, had watched the man absorb bad news about budgets and command failures and international incidents with the calm professionalism of a career soldier. He had never seen anyone talk back to him like this. He had certainly never seen a 22-year-old staff sergeant do it while holding her ground with the composure of someone being asked about the weather. Hale straightened up. His expression shifted from fury toward something colder and more calculated. He recognized a new kind of problem when he met one. "What's your background, Knox? Where did you train?" "Fort Jackson, sir. Basic combat training. MOS 92Y unit supply specialist." "A supply clerk." He said it flatly. "That is correct, sir. And you're telling me a supply clerk has the training and authorization to perform maintenance on one of the most technologically sophisticated long-range precision rifles in the United States military inventory?" "I'm telling you I was performing maintenance, sir. That is what I was doing when you arrived." "That is not an answer." "It is the one I'm authorized to give." Morris took a single cautious step forward, not quite sure what he intended to do with it. It was then that his eyes found the patch. He almost missed it. It was small, no larger than a challenge coin if flattened into a circle, positioned just beneath her unit insignia on the left sleeve. The background was a deep matte green, nearly identical in shade to the surrounding fabric. The stitching was gold. He had to squint to read it. The numbers stopped him cold. Asterisk 3200M confirmed. Asterisk beneath the text, a small crosshair symbol had been stitched with a kind of precision that suggested either a machine or an exceptionally steady hand. Sir, Morris's voice came out 2 registers higher than usual. Her sleeve. Hale's gaze snapped sideways. He looked where Morris was pointing. He leaned in. He read the patch twice, the second time more slowly than the first. The armory went quiet enough that the hum of the fluorescent lighting became audible again. What? Hale said slowly. Is that? Mara glanced down at her sleeve with the mild expression of someone reminded they left the stove on. Exactly what it reads, sir. I have never seen that badge in my life. His voice had dropped to something dangerous and low. I have been in this military for over 3 decades. I can identify every qualification badge, every skill identifier, every combat tab from basic infantry to Tier 1 special operations. I have never seen anything like that. Most people haven't, sir. Most people. He repeated the phrase slowly, testing its weight. What does that mean? It means what it says, General. Morris had already pulled out his tablet, fingers moving quickly across the screen. Pulling her service record now, sir. Give me 60 seconds. Hale kept his focus entirely on Mara. She hadn't fidgeted. She hadn't glanced toward the exit or toward the disassembled rifle behind her or toward anything that might betray a desire to be somewhere else. Her breathing was slow and even. Her hands were relaxed. It was the posture, Hale realized, not of someone enduring a confrontation. It was the posture of someone who had already calculated every possible outcome and found none of them particularly threatening. That realization made him angrier than anything she had said. 3,200 meters, he said. That's 2 miles. A bit over 2 miles, yes, sir. The longest confirmed sniper kill on record is 2,800 meters. Canadian Special Forces. That took place in Iraq. Multiple conditions, specialized equipment, experienced shooter. That was accurate until recently, sir. The word asterisk was asterisk dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Morris looked up from his tablet with the expression of a man watching a bridge begin to crack. General, Morris's face had gone pale. There's a problem with her file. Define problem. I can barely read it. He extended the tablet. I can see her name, her rank, her date of birth, and her BCT dates. Everything else has been redacted. Hale snatched the tablet from his captain's hand and stared at the screen. Page after page of service record rendered unreadable by solid black bars. Deployment history, gone. Training certifications, gone. Awards and commendations, gone. Unit assignment listed a black bar where the posting information should have been. The file looked less like a personnel record and more like a piece of abstract art. This is not possible, Hale said quietly. It gets worse, sir. Morris swiped to a second screen. I cross-referenced her supposed assignment, the 403rd Supply Battalion. She's listed in their system, but she doesn't appear on the battalion's actual roster. Officially, as far as the 403rd is concerned, Staff Sergeant Mara Knox does not exist. Hale put the tablet down on the counter. He stared at it for a moment. Then he looked up at Mara. Ghost assignment, she said before he could ask. It's standard procedure for certain types of operational coverage. Ghost assignment, he repeated. He was beginning to feel like a man who had walked through a familiar door and found himself in an entirely different building. You're going to stand there in this armory, in your supply specialist uniform, and tell me you're a ghost. I'm going to stand here and tell you I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Army, sir. Everything beyond that is above the clearance level of everyone currently in this room, including yours. Morris made a sound like a man who had been punched gently in the stomach. Above my clearance level. Hale said the words carefully, as if testing their structural integrity. You're implying that you hold a classification level that exceeds that of a 2-star general. I'm not implying anything about hierarchy, sir. I'm telling you that clearance and rank are separate systems, and that access is determined by program classification, not by the number of stars on a shoulder. You understand that principle. You've applied it to intelligence personnel before. She was absolutely right, and he despised her for it. The classification system worked exactly as she described. Access to compartmented programs was not determined by rank. It was determined by the specific program, the specific need to know, and the specific authorization granted by the program's overseers. A lieutenant with the right clearances could legally withhold information from a general without a clearance. It happened. It just didn't usually happen to asterisk him asterisk. "Captain Morris," Hale said, his voice controlled now in the way that a fist is controlled just before it breaks something. "Get Colonel Samuel Greer on a secure line, now." Morris blinked. "Sir, Colonel Greer is? I know who he is, I know what he does, and why nobody can quite explain it. Get him on the phone." Morris moved toward the door. Hale waited until the sound of his footsteps had faded before he turned back to Mara. The two of them stood on opposite sides of the armory counter with the disassembled rifle between them, and something shifted in the air, the performative pressure of the confrontation easing slightly into something more honest. "You know what I find most remarkable about this situation?" Hale asked, his voice quieter now. "Tell me, sir. It's not the redacted file. It's not even the impossible badge. It's the fact that you've been standing here looking at me the way a senior NCO looks at a delayed supply shipment. Mildly inconvenient, ultimately not worth significant energy. You're not afraid of what I can do to you. That level of composure either means you're extraordinarily well-trained, or you have protection so far up the chain that my authority is effectively irrelevant to you. Both can be true, sir. And yet you're still here. You haven't demanded a lawyer, haven't asked for representation, haven't contacted your chain of command. I don't need to, sir, because this conversation isn't going to end the way you think it is." Hale stared at her. "You're awfully confident about that. I'm accurate about most things, General. That's not arrogance, that's professional reliability." Morris reappeared in the doorway. "Sir, Colonel Greer is on the secure line. He says he'll only speak with you directly, the SIF phone in the adjacent office." Hale straightened his jacket. "This conversation," he said to Mara, "is not over." "I expected not, sir." She picked up a small tool from the workbench behind her and resumed her maintenance work on the rifle's trigger assembly. As if he were a mild distraction she had successfully accounted for and could now set aside. The office adjacent to the armory was small and dim, furnished with a metal desk, a chair with a cracked armrest, and a secure telephone that had been bolted to the desk surface with the kind of institutional permanence usually reserved for structural supports. The secure line's indicator light glowed red. Hale sat down and picked up the receiver. "Greer." "General Hale." The voice on the other end was smooth and unhurried, the voice of a man who spent his professional life being the calmest person in any given room. "I understand you've made the acquaintance of Staff Sergeant Knox." The fact that Greer already knew exactly who this call was about sent a cold sensation down the back of Hale's neck. Of course he knew. Men like Greer always knew. "Tell me who she is, Sam. Tell me what's actually happening here." "Oh, that's a layered question, Richard. How much do you want to know?" "Everything." A pause, the sound of a door closing on the other end of the line. When Greer's voice returned, it had shed the casual surface layer and arrived at something more fundamental. "What I'm about to share with you carries a classification designation that I need you to formally acknowledge before I proceed. Do you consent to being read in?" Being read into a program by a man several ranks his junior would have been humiliating under ordinary circumstances. But Hale had stopped caring about his pride approximately 8 minutes ago, somewhere around the moment he'd read the number on that patch. "Acknowledged. Tell me." "Project Longshot." Greer delivered the name with the weight of something that had taken years to build. "It is a joint black program initiated 6 years ago, with participation from multiple agencies and military branches. Its singular purpose is the identification and development of human operators capable of engaging targets at distances that conventional military doctrine considers operationally impossible. We are talking about precision fire at ranges that exceed current records by several hundred meters, performed in real field conditions, against real targets. And Knox is part of this. Knox is one of the program's most significant achievements. She was identified during basic combat training at Fort Jackson when her qualification scores were flagged by the range safety officer as statistically anomalous. On her first attempt with an M4, a weapon she had never previously fired, she shot a 39 out of 40. The single miss was traced to a defective firing pin that she had already reported to the armorer before anyone else confirmed the malfunction. Hale absorbed that. "So you pulled her." "We observed her. We let her complete basic training and her 92Y school entirely uninterrupted. The supply specialist cover was established before she graduated. It was not assigned to her. It was built around her with her full cooperation. By the time she received her official MOS certification, she had already been undergoing advanced marksmanship development at a separate facility for several months." "How advanced?" Advanced enough that by the time she was 20 years old and 6 months into the operational phase of her training, she conducted her first confirmed engagement. The phrase landed with a particular weight. Confirmed engagement was military language that kept its distance from the physical reality it described, but Hale understood perfectly well what it meant. You deployed her operationally at 20 years old, fresh out of training. We deployed a highly specialized asset against a high-value target who was planning an attack on American service members. The target was located in Syria. The range was 3,200 meters. She made the shot on her first attempt. Hale set his elbow on the desk and pressed his fingers against his forehead. That is the record on her patch. Yes, it's also a record in a more literal sense, though one that won't appear in any public database. The shot in Syria was her first operational engagement. It was also the longest confirmed precision kill in the history of modern warfare. She was 20 years old. Her age and her rank were irrelevant to the outcome, Richard. What was relevant is that the target was eliminated, the planned attack was disrupted, and not a single American life was lost. That is the point of this program. We find people who can do things that shouldn't be possible. We train them to do those things with consistency and precision, and we give them cover identities that render them invisible to anyone who might want to stop them. The logistics cover. Nobody looks twice at a supply clerk. She can move almost anywhere a requisition order takes her. She has access to equipment through legitimate channels. She blends into the background of any installation, any forward operating base, any military environment. The best concealment isn't ghillie suits and face paint, Richard. It's a manila folder and a common job title. Hale was quiet for a moment. How many others are there? Approximately 24 in various stages of training. 5 have been operationally deployed. Knox is one of 3 who have successfully engaged targets beyond the 3,000-meter threshold. The other 2 are special operations veterans with 15 or more years of experience. And Knox. Knox is the youngest person in the program by nearly a decade. In training, her longest successful shot was 3,400 meters. She attempted 3,600 twice and came within 18 inches of center on both attempts. For context, 18 inches of deviation at that range represents less error margin than most trained snipers achieve at a quarter of the distance. That patch on her sleeve. Hale shifted gears. She's been ordered to remove it. A pause, twice, by her program commander. And she keeps putting it back on. She does. We made a decision to allow it to continue after the second incident. The psychological value outweighs the security risk, and frankly, anyone who doesn't already know about the program isn't going to believe the number regardless of what they see on her sleeve. You nearly didn't believe it, and you're a general. I still haven't fully processed it. Hale looked at the closed door of the office. What happens now? What are you expecting me to do with this? I'm expecting you to walk back into that armory, tell Knox she's free to complete her maintenance, and then forget this phone call happened. When you need someone who can reach out and remove a threat from a distance that makes conventional security measures irrelevant, you'll know who to contact. Just like that. Just like that. The most effective weapons are the ones your enemies don't know exist. You understand that principle, General. You've built strategies around it your entire career. The line disconnected. Hale sat with the receiver in his hand for perhaps 30 seconds after the dial tone began. Then he replaced it carefully, stood, smoothed the front of his uniform jacket, and walked back toward the armory. Mara was exactly where he'd left her. The trigger assembly he'd watched her examining was now fully reinstalled, and she had moved on to the barrel's cleaning rod inspection. She glanced up when he entered, read something in his expression, and set the rod down without being asked. Captain Morris. Hale addressed his aide without looking at him. Everything you witnessed or heard in this room today falls under a classification level I'm not prepared to specify, but which you should assume is high enough that discussing it anywhere, with anyone under any circumstances, would be professionally catastrophic for you. Morris stood very straight. Heard nothing relevant today, sir. Was not in this room for any significant portion of the last 40 minutes. Good man. Hale turned to Mara. He paused for a moment, organizing what he wanted to say with the care of a man who had spent a career saying difficult things directly. Staff Sergeant Knox, I owe you an apology. The silence that followed was the first genuine surprise she had shown since he'd walked through the door. Her eyebrows rose a fraction of a centimeter. I came in here making assumptions. I treated you with contempt that was based entirely on what your uniform and your official job title told me about you, and not on any evidence of what you actually are. That was bad intelligence, and acting on bad intelligence is the kind of mistake that gets people killed. I should have known better. Mara said nothing for a moment. Then, I appreciate that, sir. Hale gestured at the Barrett's components arranged across her workbench. The organization was meticulous, not just clean, but positioned with the kind of spatial logic that made the sequence of reassembly self-evident. It was the work of someone who had disassembled and rebuilt this particular system so many times that the layout had become a kind of muscle memory. You clearly know exactly what you're doing. I do, sir. That patch. He nodded toward her sleeve. You're going to keep wearing it. It wasn't a question. She recognized that. Yes, sir. Even though you've been ordered to remove it, even though it creates the kind of attention that works against the cover you're supposed to be maintaining. It's important to remember what you're capable of, she said, especially in an environment where everyone around you is operating on the assumption that you're nothing more than a supply clerk. If I take that patch off, there's a version of me that starts to believe them. Hale looked at her steadily. Underneath the professional equanimity, he could see something now that he had missed in his initial fury. The very specific kind of discipline that comes not from suppressing emotion, but from having processed emotions so thoroughly that they no longer control the surface. Whatever Mara Knox carried internally, she had organized it with the same methodical precision she applied to the rifle parts on her workbench. How long until the rifle is ready? Another 40 minutes. The trigger assembly needed replacement. The original showed stress fracturing under magnification. Microfractures along the spring seat that would have compromised precision at extreme range. You identified microfractures. With the appropriate optics, yes, sir. It's not unusual to find them after high-volume use. Most people miss them because they are looking for visible damage, not structural fatigue. Of course, Hale almost smiled. He glanced at Morris, who was standing near the door with the careful stillness of a man who had decided the safest thing he could do was cease to exist. Captain, we have that briefing at 1400 hours. 12 minutes, sir. Then we'd better move. Hale looked back at Mara. One more question before I go. Sir, that shot in Syria, 3,200 meters. What were the atmospheric conditions? Mara answered without consulting notes, without pausing to recall. The numbers came out with the easy precision of someone reciting something they had written on the inside of their eyelids. Wind at 12 knots, gusting periodically to 15, crosswind from the northeast at roughly 40 degrees to my firing line. Temperature differential of 18 degrees between my position and the target location. I was at higher elevation, cooler air. Humidity was low, 11%. I calculated a 7-meter drop correction and a 3-meter windage hold. And how long did you have to make the decision? 20 seconds from positive target identification to the moment of engagement. Hale did the math. At 3,200 meters, a bullet traveling at roughly 900 meters per second would spend more than 3.5 seconds in flight. During those 3.5 seconds, every variable she described would work on the round. Gravity pulling it down, wind pushing it sideways, air density affecting its velocity. The rotation of the Earth introducing a lateral drift that most shooters never even accounted for. 20 seconds to calculate all of that, to dial it in, to acquire the target, to steady herself, and to pull the trigger with the kind of motionless commitment that would keep the round on its computed path. Did you pray? He asked. A ghost of a smile crossed her face, brief, real, and gone almost immediately. Before I pulled the trigger, yes, sir, it seemed appropriate. I imagine it did. Carry on, Staff Sergeant. The next morning arrived like a fist. General Hale was reviewing overnight communications from Forsicom when the knock came at his temporary office door. Morris entered with the posture of a man carrying something heavy. Sir, we have a situation. Define situation. Staff Sergeant Knox. Someone just attempted to abduct her outside her quarters on base. Hale was on his feet before Morris finished the sentence. She's secure. For the moment, sir. Collins, Master Sergeant Collins, 3rd Special Forces Group. He was in the area. He got there within 30 seconds of the altercation. 2 of the attackers are down. A 3rd fled the scene with a wound she put around through his left shoulder. She's uninjured, but sir, Morris paused. One of the attackers was carrying a DoD identification card. Military credentials, not contractor. Someone with institutional access sent those people. Hale stood very still for a moment, processing the implications. In the days since his confrontation with Mara in the Armory and the subsequent revelation of Project Longshot, events had moved quickly. The anonymous tip to Criminal Investigation Command that had nearly resulted in Mara's arrest. The surveillance Morris had uncovered through base security camera footage. A man in civilian clothes, always at a distance, always positioned to observe Mara's movements without being directly observed himself. The steadily compiling evidence that someone, somewhere inside the conventional military structure, was running an active campaign to expose and destroy Project Longshot and others like it. Bradford. The name had come up in Greer's intelligence assessment 2 days earlier. Colonel Thomas Bradford, assigned to the Judge Advocate General's Corps, whose service record contained several suspicious gaps and whose access clearances extended considerably further than his official responsibilities required. "Get me Greer," Hale said. "Already ahead of you, sir. He's on the secure line." The helicopter to Washington departed at 0810. Below them, Fort Bragg receded into the tree lines and access roads of the Carolina landscape. Morris sat across from Hale with his tablet, working through the briefing materials Greer had been sending in batches over the last 2 hours. Hale stared out the window and thought about a 22-year-old woman who had been told she was a supply clerk, who had adopted that cover so thoroughly that she spent her days counting inventory and signing forms, and doing everything a 92Y was supposed to do, and who had still been found, still been targeted, still been forced to defend herself in the pre-dawn darkness outside her own quarters. She'd put a round through a fleeing attacker from what couldn't have been more than 30 feet in low light after the physical and adrenaline demands of neutralizing 2 others. Clean shot, center of left shoulder mass, incapacitating without killing. That wasn't a panic response. That was precision under pressure. His phone vibrated. A message from Mara. Asterisk heard about the 48-hour deadline. "I'm ready to go public if that's what's needed. Tell me what you need from me." Asterisk he typed back. Asterisk stay safe. "Let the political side run its course. You've already done more than enough." Asterisk 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Asterisk respectfully, "Sir, this is my fight as much as anyone's. I'm not hiding anymore." Asterisk he stared at that last sentence. Then he put the phone in his pocket and looked at Morris. "Captain, when we get to the Pentagon, I need you to be sharp. The briefing we're walking into is no longer just about demonstrating a program's value. It's about building a wall around the people in that program before someone with resources and motivation finishes what Bradford started." "Understood, sir. What's our primary argument?" "Simple. What we saw at range 47 2 days ago. No slide deck, no abstract capability claims. I watched it happen, and I'm going to describe it to people whose approval we need. And they're going to believe me because generals don't typically go to the Pentagon and lie to 4 stars about something they witnessed personally. What if they ask for documentation? Then we produce Collins's after-action statement, Kowalski's range record, and the testimony of the 3 observers who were standing there with their mouths open. And if that's not enough," he paused, "then we bring Knox herself." Morris's expression flickered with something between admiration and concern. "That's a significant risk, sir." "Everything about the last 72 hours has been a significant risk, Captain. I stopped thinking about risk management approximately when a 2-star started using his authority to shield an enlisted soldier from an impromptu criminal investigation." A pause. Then, "Fair point, sir. 2 days earlier, the decision to conduct the live demonstration had been, by any rational measure of military protocol, entirely inappropriate. Hale had authorized it anyway. Range 47 was a long, natural valley between 2 parallel ridge lines, stretching roughly 5 kilometers from the firing line to the far hillside. It had been designed for artillery ranging and occasional long-range rifle qualification, though the latter typically stopped well short of the range's theoretical maximum. The valley was dry and quiet in the early afternoon, the air carrying a mild crosswind from the northeast that the range flags measured at 5 to 7 knots. Master Sergeant Kowalski, the range control NCO, had looked at Mara Knox with the particular expression of a man who has been asked to facilitate something he finds improbable. He was grizzled in the way that only decades of outdoor military service produces, with the flat competence of someone who had watched thousands of shooters on this range and developed strong opinions about what excellence looked like. Mara had not made a strong first impression on Kowalski. 22 years old, slender, supply specialist tabs, and a look of total calm that he probably interpreted as either inexperience or indifference. He had run through the range safety brief with her the same way he ran it with everyone, thorough, professional, somewhat perfunctory. She had listened with perfect attention and said, "Understood, Master Sergeant. I'm ready when you are." Master Sergeant Collins, who had arrived per Greer's quiet request to observe, had set up a spotting scope on a tripod at the firing line. He was a 22-year veteran of special operations, a credentialed long-range instructor who had trained some of the finest precision shooters in the military. He had watched Mara begin her preparations with the careful neutrality of someone reserving judgment. He would not be neutral for long. Mara laid her equipment out behind the firing line with the same systematic precision that characterized everything she did. Magazines, cleaning supplies, a small rangefinder, and the leather-bound data book, its cover worn smooth by what must have been years of handling, arranged in a specific sequence that suggested a pre-performance ritual as much as practical organization. She loaded the Barrett, settled into position, and ran a ballistic calculation for the first target, a standard silhouette at 2,000 meters. She called out her adjustments, elevation, windage, the figures precise and confident, dialed them into her scope and settled her breathing. The rifle spoke. The round traveled its path. Downrange, the target's center mass registered an impact. "Hit," Collins called, his eye to the spotting scope. "Center mass approximately 3 inches left of the vertical midline." Mara cycled the bolt. She fired again. Hit 4 inches to the right of the first. Fired a third time, hit 2 inches above the second. 3 rounds, 3 confirmed impacts, all within a 12-inch circle at 2,000 meters. Kowalski looked at Collins. Collins looked at his scope. Neither said anything. There was nothing wrong with what they'd just seen. It was excellent shooting, technically accomplished, but it wasn't impossible. Not yet. Then Mara lifted her head from the optic and asked about the artillery ranging plate at 2,500 meters. What followed was a systematic dismantling of every assumption about human marksmanship that Kowalski and Collins had spent their careers building. At 2,500 meters, she struck the center of the steel plate on her first attempt, the impact ringing out across the valley like a struck bell. Collins confirmed it through his spotting scope with a voice that had lost some of its professional composure. At 3,000 meters, the official maximum of the range, beyond which there was nothing configured as a formal target, she asked for a reference point. Kowalski pointed to an old artillery impact marker, a wooden post, roughly 6 feet tall, barely distinguishable at that distance. Collins found it in his spotting scope only with difficulty. Mara ran new calculations in her data book. The numbers she called out elevation and windage adjustments that accounted for drop and drift that seemed physically implausible were precise and unhesitating. She sent the round. 4 seconds of silence. The wooden post disintegrated. Kowalski's binoculars dropped from his face. He stared at the distant hillside where the post had been standing 40 seconds ago. Beside him, one of the medical technicians made a sound that was probably the only honest response to witnessing something that contradicted the laws of expectation. Collins's voice came out very quietly. "Direct hit. Post is gone. Gone entirely." Nobody spoke for approximately 10 seconds. Then Mara stood from behind the Barrett, turned to face Hale, and said with the same tone she might use to ask what time the commissary closed, "Was that sufficient, sir? Or would you like to continue?" "Continue," Hale heard himself say. At 3,240 meters, a flat-topped rock, roughly the size of a car hood, barely visible through maximum magnification at that distance. She made her calculations, announced her scope adjustments, settled into position, and spoke the word asterisk sending asterisk in a voice like quiet water. The shot took just over 4 seconds to arrive. The rock fractured. Silence crashed across the range like a physical force. The observers stood perfectly still, as if motion itself had been suspended. Collins was no longer looking through his spotting scope. He was simply standing there, shaking his head in small, involuntary increments, his career's worth of expertise struggling to integrate what his eyes had just confirmed. "That," Mara said calmly, picking up the rifle and beginning to safe it, "is what the patch means." General Marcus Stone, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, was a man of exceptional mass in both physical and institutional terms. He occupied the head of the conference table in room 3C875, with the settled authority of someone who had spent decades becoming the kind of person that other powerful people paid attention to when he spoke. He was paying attention to Hale. "You have 30 minutes, Stone said, when Hale stood at the front of the room. "Tell me why I shouldn't simply authorize the shutdown and manage the fallout." "Because you'd be destroying a capability that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth, sir. And because the fallout from shutting it down is going to be considerably worse than the fallout from protecting it." He told them about Mara. He told them about the Armory, about the patch, about the redacted file, and the moment when he'd first begun to understand that what he was looking at was not a logistics soldier doing something inappropriate, but a precision weapon doing exactly what it was designed to do. He told them about Range 47. He described the 3,000-meter shot first, watching the room's collective skepticism tighten into something more complicated. Then he described the 3,240-meter shot and watched that complication resolve into silence. "A wooden post at 3 kilometers, a 3-star general across the table said carefully. "A wooden post at 3,240 meters, sir. First attempt. 4.5 seconds of flight time, direct hit." Hale looked around the room. Master Sergeant Collins from 3rd SFG was spotting. Master Sergeant Kowalski ran the range. 3 other cleared observers. All of them can confirm. None of them have been able to explain it in terms that don't require rewriting what we think is possible with small arms. "How old did you say she is?" 22 years old, sir. MOS 92Y unit supply specialist. She has been performing this way for 2 years. Stone leaned back in his chair. He steepled his fingers. He looked at the wall for a moment as if expecting it to offer guidance. "Who's trying to shut this program down?" "Until this morning, we didn't have a name." Hale glanced at his phone, checked the latest from Greer. "We do now. Colonel Thomas Bradford, JAG Corps. He's been running a coordinated effort to expose multiple special access programs to outside scrutiny. Using a network of institutional access and compartmented knowledge he appears to have accumulated over several years. This morning, he ordered what we believe was an abduction attempt against Staff Sergeant Knox. She defended herself. 2 attackers are dead. Bradford is in custody." Stone's expression shifted through several distinct phases in rapid succession. Surprise, calculation, anger, and then the kind of focused clarity that characterized decisions made by people who had been in command long enough to recognize when a situation required them to stop managing and start acting. "Someone else is going to have to explain to me how a colonel in the Judge Advocate General's Corps has the operational resources to organize a snatch team against one of our own soldiers. That explanation is going to take time we may not have, sir. Someone associated with Bradford's network has given us a 48-hour deadline. Documents pertaining to Project Longshot's operations, personnel files, mission summaries, everything will be released to media organizations unless we find a way to stop it." The room erupted. Stone raised his hand for quiet. He got it almost immediately. "Then we get ahead of it," he said. "Controlled disclosure on our terms. A press release that acknowledges the program's existence, emphasizes its strategic value, protects the identities of active operators, and frames this as innovation rather than scandal. We control the narrative before someone else does." He turned to Brigadier General Marsh. "How fast can you put that together?" 24 hours if we start now, sir." "Start now." Stone turned back to Hale. "And get Knox here tomorrow morning. I want to meet her." "Sir, given the security situation." "Then provide adequate security. Marine detail, armored transport, whatever she needs. I want her in this building by 0900. Bradford was in custody for 4 hours before he was no longer in custody. The details of his escape, when Morris relayed them to Hale in the Pentagon corridor, were both alarming and clarifying. 2 military police officers wounded during transport. Bradford moving with a speed and tactical precision that was wildly inconsistent with a career spent in legal review and administrative oversight. He had known exactly where the vulnerabilities were in his own security arrangement. "Because he was trained for this," Hale said. "That's what Greer is saying, sir. Bradford's jacket shows a background in military legal work, but there are gaps. Several months in 2016 and again in 2019 that are simply missing. No assignment records, no evaluation reports, no training documentation. Greer thinks he underwent some kind of covert skills training during those periods." "A plant," Hale said. "Someone placed him in the JAG Corps specifically because of the access it provides to classified programs. He could review operational legal frameworks, access personnel records through official channels, build a picture of black program personnel and operations over years without triggering any of the standard counterintelligence tripwires. That's the assessment, sir. The question is who placed him, and whether Bradford was the only one. Morris said nothing. The silence confirmed that neither of them wanted to sit too long with the implications of that question. Hale's phone rang. An unknown number, he answered. General Hale. The voice on the other end was professional, measured, entirely without effect, the voice of someone who had rehearsed this call. I'm aware that you've identified Bradford and that you're building a case for Project Longshot's legitimacy. I want to offer you some relevant context. Who is this? Someone who believes that the American public has a right to understand what is being done in their name and with their tax dollars. Someone who is 47 hours from releasing a comprehensive package of classified documents that will make that understanding unavoidable. That's espionage. That's oversight. The program you're protecting operates without accountability. The operators in it conduct lethal operations that no congressional committee has been briefed on and no independent review has sanctioned. What Knox does may be impressive, General, but it exists in a legal and ethical vacuum. We intend to illuminate that vacuum by publishing the identities of active operators. Hale kept his voice flat. Foreign intelligence services will have those files within hours of publication. You're describing a death sentence for every person connected to that program. People who choose to operate in the shadows accept the risks of that choice. Some of them are 22 years old. Some of them were identified and recruited before they were old enough to make fully informed choices about anything. You're comfortable with that? A pause, shorter than Hale would have liked. The program will be exposed, General. Whether your army chooses to manage that exposure or be surprised by it is the only decision left on the table. The line went dead. She arrived at the Pentagon at 0847. 6 Marines flanked the armored vehicle that pulled into the secure bay. Collins was with her, wearing the expression of a man who had decided that protecting this particular individual was now his primary professional commitment regardless of what his official orders said. Mara stepped out of the vehicle in her dress uniform, the patch on her sleeve catching the fluorescent light of the parking structure. She looked like she'd slept. Hale wasn't entirely sure how, given the events of the previous 24 hours, but she had the steady eyes and controlled bearing of someone who had found whatever equilibrium she needed and was now operating from it. General, she saluted precisely. Knox. He returned it. How are you holding together? Fine, sir. I've had worse weeks. He believed her, which was itself remarkable. The people you're about to meet are among the most powerful officers in the United States military. They're going to ask you questions that you'd normally refuse to answer for classification reasons. Greer has authorized full disclosure within the scope of what we've declassified over the last 12 hours. Answer honestly, answer completely, and don't perform. Perform, sir. Don't try to impress them. Don't try to manage their reactions. Just tell them the truth about what you do and why it matters. They've heard enough polished briefings. What they need is someone who looks them in the eye and tells them something real. A corner of her mouth moved. I can do that, sir. Room 3C875 was quieter than it had been the previous morning. The same faces, more or less, but the energy was different, less combative, more serious. Bradford's escape and the 48-hour ultimatum had shifted the atmosphere from skepticism toward something more focused. Stone stood when Mara entered. She hadn't expected that. Something in her expression acknowledged it without making a production of the surprise. Staff Sergeant Knox. Stone extended his hand. General Hale has told us what you demonstrated at range 47. I'd like to hear about it in your own words. She sat. She didn't fidget. She didn't qualify her language or soften her descriptions. She explained the mechanics of extreme long-range precision shooting with the same clear, unsentimentalized accuracy that she brought to everything else. And when the generals around the table asked questions, she answered them with specificity and without hesitation. When Brigadier General Marsh asked the question that had been circling the room all morning, how do you do it? How do you make yourself pull a trigger at that distance, knowing what's going to happen to a human being 4 seconds later? Mara didn't look away and she didn't reach for comfortable language. I separate the calculation from the consequence, she said. Not because the consequence doesn't matter, it does, and I think about it and I carry it. But in the moment of the shot, the ethical decision has already been made by people with the authority to make it. My responsibility at that point is purely technical. Is the elevation correct? Is the windage correct? Is my hold steady? Will the round go where I'm sending it? Those are questions I can answer with certainty. The others, whether the target deserves what's coming, whether this is the right decision for the right reasons, those were answered before I ever settled into position. Does that make it easier? Marsh asked. No, ma'am, nothing makes it easy, but it makes it executable. There's a difference. Stone was watching her with a particular intensity. Staff Sergeant, you've been operating undercover as a supply specialist for 2 years. During that time, you've conducted 3 confirmed operational engagements, been subjected to active surveillance by a hostile internal actor, survived a physical abduction attempt, and spent this morning at the Pentagon instead of in whatever safe house Greer wanted to put you in. At what point did you decide to stop hiding? Mara considered the question carefully. She looked at the patch on her sleeve for a moment. When I realized that hiding was becoming indistinguishable from disappearing, she said. I signed up for cover. I didn't sign up to become someone who forgets she exists. That patch, she touched it briefly. My program commander ordered me to take it off, twice. I kept putting it back because it's the only honest thing about my uniform. Everything else is a carefully constructed fiction. That number is real. I made that shot. I am the person who made that shot, and I will not pretend to be less than that so that other people can be comfortable with my existence. The room was very quiet. That's not just confidence, Stone said. No, sir, it's survival. When you spend enough time pretending to be ordinary, you start to lose track of what ordinary means and whether it's something you ever want to go back to. Stone looked around the table. Something had been decided, though no one had said so explicitly. What do you need from us? He asked. Protect the program, Mara said. Not just the classified aspects, protect the people. The operators, the support staff, the analysts and trainers and evaluators who have built this capability in the dark for 6 years because they believed it mattered. They shouldn't be in danger from their own institution. And when the information goes public, and I understand now that it will frame it correctly, we're not assassins operating without oversight. We're precise instruments of a specific strategic capability, and we've used that capability to save lives. Let that be the story. The press release went out at 1400 hours. It was carefully written. Marsh had spent 18 straight hours on it with 3 attorneys and 2 communications specialists. And it said exactly as much as it needed to say without saying anything that would endanger anyone. It acknowledged the existence of a joint advanced marksmanship program, described the strategic rationale in general terms, included a statistics block about operational success rates, and attached a statement from General Stone that used the phrase *American ingenuity and human excellence * twice. It did not name Mara Knox. It did not name anyone. The response from the media was immediate and against all reasonable expectation. Largely positive. The phrase * precision, capabilities beyond known limits * generated significant interest. Military analysts appeared on cable news programs and described the strategic implications of extreme long-range precision fire with a mixture of accuracy and confident speculation. Social media filled with the kind of commentary that always accompanies revelations about military capability, ranging from genuine awe to inventive conspiracy theorizing. The 48-hour ultimatum expired. The documents were not released. Hale never found out with certainty whether the controlled disclosure had genuinely preempted the leak or whether something else had intervened. Greer, characteristically, said only that * the network had been addressed * and declined to elaborate. Bradford was found in a Baltimore apartment 3 days later, a single gunshot wound to the head, the firearm beside him. The county medical examiner ruled it a suicide. Hale's instincts said something different. His instincts also told him that some questions were better left unasked. 4 individuals connected to Bradford's network were taken into custody over the following week. Greer's team had been working the surveillance threads for longer than the public confrontation suggested. The attack on Mara had accelerated a timeline that was already in motion. The network had been deeper than Bradford, but not deep enough to survive its exposure. 3 weeks after the Pentagon briefing, Hale found himself sitting across from Mara in a quiet room at Fort Bragg, the leather data book open on the table between them. Greer had authorized a full debrief, not of Mara's operational history, which remained classified above Hale's clearance level, but of the technical methodology behind what she did. for incorporation into a training framework that Project Longshot would eventually share with the broader special operations community. Hale had asked to sit in. Greer had looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Why not?" The data book was extraordinary. 37 pages of handwritten entries in a precise, small script, each one a record of a specific shooting event with the thoroughness of scientific documentation. Date, location, atmospheric conditions, equipment specifications, calculations, results. No emotional content, no narrative color, pure data, but the data of a human being doing something extraordinary. He had opened to a random page and found an entry dated 14 months ago. Asterisk location, redacted. Range 3247 m, target HVT-7. Conditions, wind 14 kts variable, temp 34 degrees C, humidity 18%, barometric pressure 1007 h-pa. Adjustments 21, 4 mils elevation 6, 8 mils windage. Result confirmed. TOF 4, 2 seconds. Asterisk TOF, time of flight, 4.2 seconds. What do you think about, he asked, during those 4 seconds after you fired, while you're waiting for the round to arrive? Mara looked at the entry he was reading. I watched through the scope and I verify that I held correctly. I'm reviewing my position, my trigger press, whether I maintained cheek weld through the shot. If I did everything right, the round will be where I sent it. If I didn't, I'll be able to identify exactly what I did wrong and correct it for the next attempt. You're not hoping. Hope is what you do when you've done your best and it's insufficient. If I've done my job correctly, hope isn't a required component. She paused. But I say a prayer, sir, every time, not that the shot lands, I've done the work for that. A prayer that the decision was the right one, that the intelligence was accurate, that the person at the other end of that 4 seconds is who we were told they were, and that their elimination actually makes things better somewhere. And if you're not sure of those things, then I say the prayer and I take the shot anyway because I am a component of a larger system that I have to trust. My job is to be the most precise and reliable component I can be. The moral weight of the decision belongs to the people who made it, not to me. He closed the data book. You've thought about this a great deal. I've had a lot of quiet hours in elevated positions, sir. Thinking is what fills them. Do you ever regret any of it? The program, the cover, the life you've been living? She considered the question for a long moment. I regret the isolation sometimes. The cover means I can't tell anyone real what I actually am. Most relationships become performances because I'm always performing who I'm supposed to be rather than who I actually am. That's a cost. She looked at the patch on her sleeve. But I don't regret the work itself. The work is real and it matters, and there is almost nobody else on earth who can do it. If not me, then who? And if nobody, then what happens to the people who needed it to be done? Your father would have understood that, I think. A pause. Something shifted very slightly in her expression, not quite grief, but something adjacent to it, something that had been processed many times and would be processed many more before it settled. My father understood exactly that, she said. He died doing exactly that. That's not a coincidence in terms of why I'm here. It's a continuation. Project Longshot's transition from black to gray status happened over the course of 2 months, managed with the careful incrementalism of an institution that fundamentally prefers to change slowly. New oversight mechanisms were established. A congressional subcommittee was briefed, in general terms, on the program's existence and objectives. A formal review process was created to evaluate operational decisions before they were executed. Greer managed most of this with the practiced patience of someone who had been expecting it for years and had already thought through how to shape it toward outcomes that protected the program's essential functionality. The oversight was real, but it was also designed. The program could live with it. Mara received a formal commendation. The citation was deliberately vague. It cited asterisk exceptional performance under adverse conditions asterisk and asterisk significant contribution to the security of American personnel asterisk. But it was signed by General Stone, and it existed on the public record, which was more than anything she'd received in 2 years of operational service. She was offered a position in the program's training division, working with new recruits, sharing the methodology she had developed through years of solitary refinement. She declined. I appreciate the confidence that comes with being asked, she told Greer in the meeting where he made the offer. But I'm a shooter, sir. Put me behind a desk and you've converted a precision instrument into a paperweight. That's not efficient resource management. Greer had looked at her for a long moment. Then he'd said, "Approved for continued operational status." Collins, who had filed a formal transfer request the day after Range 47 and had been waiting since then for its resolution, was assigned to her security detail with a secondary role as field observer on deployments where a second set of eyes would improve operational outcomes. He accepted the assignment with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had waited a long time for a posting that actually made sense. On the afternoon of the ceremony marking Project Longshot's formal, if limited, acknowledgement, Hale found Mara standing outside the headquarters building, looking up at a sky that was doing nothing in particular. The late afternoon light was the kind that made everything look a little more significant than it probably was, and the base around them was going about its ordinary business of vehicles and formations and people moving between buildings with the purposeful momentum of institutional life. "Reflecting?" he asked. "Calculating," she said. "The wind is coming from the southwest at about 9 knots. There's a heat shimmer over the runway that suggests a temperature gradient. If that flagpole," she nodded toward the administration building, "were a target at 1,500 meters, I'd need to account for upward draft from the tarmac surface." "You do that automatically. Look at things and calculate what it would take to hit them." "Constantly, sir. It's not a choice at this point. It's just how I see." "Does that ever turn off?" "When I'm asleep, maybe. Not always then either." She looked at him sideways. "Does tactical thinking turn off for you? Do you ever stop looking at a building and thinking about the approaches and the defensible positions and the lines of fire?" "Not since 1997. "Then you understand." He looked at the patch on her sleeve. The gold numbers caught the sun at a particular angle and threw a brief reflection across the fabric of her uniform. 3200M. The number that had started all of this, a number that had seemed impossible until it wasn't. "You know you don't have to wear that anymore," he said. "The program is acknowledged. What you did in Syria is documented, at least within the system. You're not fighting for recognition inside a bureaucracy that doesn't know you exist." "I know, sir." She looked down at it. "But I spent 2 years being told by implication and by circumstance that I was nobody, a supply clerk, a checkbox on a roster, someone whose actual capabilities were less important than the cover story that concealed them. This," she touched the patch, "is a reminder that the cover story was never the truth. It was just a mask. The truth is what's underneath." "And what's underneath?" She met his eyes with the same directness that had infuriated him when they'd first stood across that Armory counter, that absolute absence of deference or deflection that was not arrogance but something harder to name. Honesty, maybe, or just the clarity of someone who had looked at themselves without flinching and decided they could live with what they saw. "Someone who doesn't miss," she said simply. He offered his hand. She shook it with a firm, brief grip. "The Yemen request," he said. "Greer forwarded it to me for concurrence, 3,400 meters. Estimated 3,420, she corrected. "Can you make it?" She thought about it for exactly the length of time that the question warranted, not long, but not nothing. "I'll make it on the first attempt," she said. "The wind pattern in that region at this time of year is predictable if you know what to look for. I have historical atmospheric data going back 4 years. I'll need 40 minutes to run the full calculation before the window opens, but yes, I can make it." He nodded. "Then go make it." She picked up the rifle case that had been sitting beside her on the ground. He hadn't noticed it there, which was probably intentional, and walked toward the flight line where a vehicle was already waiting. Collins fell into step beside her without being summoned, appearing from somewhere nearby as if he'd been there all along. Hale watched them go until the vehicle rounded a corner and disappeared. 32 years of service. More engagements and operations and crises and command decisions than he had fully cataloged in his own memory. He had thought, for a long time, that he had seen the shape of his institution, that the 30-plus years had given him something close to comprehensive understanding. Mara Knox had taken about 6 minutes to prove that wrong, and somewhere in the specific quality of being wrong about something that large, he had found something he hadn't expected. The recognition that an institution capable of producing what she was, capable of identifying that kind of talent, developing it, deploying it, and protecting it, even imperfectly, even under fire, was an institution that was still becoming something. Still reaching toward a ceiling it hadn't yet found. There was a name for that kind of potential. He'd seen it in a data book 37 pages long in the careful handwriting of someone who documented impossible things as though they were simply facts. He walked back toward the headquarters building. His phone buzzed with a message from Greer. Knox has cleared the flight line. Wheels up in 90 minutes. I'll update you on the outcome. He typed back. She won't need a second attempt. Greer replied after a moment. No, she never does. Hale put the phone in his pocket and entered the building, returning to the ordinary world of briefings and logistics and the visible machinery of military administration. Somewhere over the horizon, invisible and unreachable by any conventional measure of range and capability, a woman was settling into position with a rifle and a data book, and a certainty about what she could do that neither 32 years of experience nor any amount of institutional authority could provide. You earned certainty like that the hard way. You built it one shot at a time at distances that grew longer as your understanding deepened, until the distance that once seemed impossible became the distance you used for practice. And then you found a longer one. The elevator opened. Hale stepped inside, pressed the button for the third floor, and thought about a number stitched in gold thread on the sleeve of a supply clerk's uniform. 3200M. Confirmed. He smiled to himself as the doors closed. The mission brief was 12 pages. Mara read it twice on the flight and once more in the safe house, then set it aside and opened her data book to a fresh page. She wrote the date in the upper left corner. She wrote the estimated range. She wrote the location, redacted as always for the final version but legible to her in the private shorthand she used for the working copy. She noted the seasonal wind patterns for the region, cross-referenced against the atmospheric data she had requested from the program's support staff 2 days earlier. Then she closed the book and sat quietly for a while. Collins was across the room, going over his own preparation materials. He had been her observer for 3 months now, and she had developed the kind of professional trust in him that took most operator relationships years to establish. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He didn't offer unsolicited advice. He understood his role in the system they formed together, and he performed it with the precision she required. "Wind profile?" he asked, without looking up. "Southwest, prevailing at 11 knots with a directional variation in the late afternoon that shifts it toward the south. Temperature gradient between the elevation of our position and the target location is going to be significant. They are in a valley. We'll be on a ridge line. The density difference will affect terminal velocity." "How much?" "I'll factor in approximately 4% velocity reduction over the final 400 meters of flight." 4%, he nodded slowly. "You've already done the calculation. I've been doing it since I read the brief on the plane." He looked up at her. "How long is the flight time going to be at 3,420 meters? Approximately 9 seconds from a suppressed platform, a few tenths longer than the Syria shot." She looked at her data book. "I'll hold steady for 4 seconds after trigger break, standard practice." 4 seconds. 4 seconds of absolute stillness, of trusting every calculation she had made and every preparation she had done, of inhabiting the space between sending the round and knowing its destination with the particular discipline that she had spent years developing, the discipline of letting go. She thought about what she had told General Hale in that Pentagon briefing room, about separating the calculation from the consequence, about trust in the system, in the decision makers, in herself. She thought about her father, who had understood all of this without her having to explain it because he had lived the same thing. 2 tours in Iraq, a rifle, and the knowledge that some things only got done by people who could do them without flinching. She opened the data book to the fresh page and wrote 3 more words beneath the location entry. *ready. First attempt. Collins looked over at her. "Tomorrow morning?" "Tomorrow morning," she confirmed, "before the wind shifts." She closed the book. She put it in the inner pocket of her jacket, the way she always did, close enough that she could feel it against her ribs, a physical reminder of the 37 pages of evidence that she was exactly who she was. The patch on her sleeve caught the light from the window. 3200M, confirmed. Tomorrow, she would write a new number and a new entry, in the careful, unhurried hand of someone who documented the extraordinary as though it were simply the way things were. Because for her, it was.